should be considered as an escalation. And it's a new phase of military threats. You can see China is trying to normalize this kind of threats. There's been numerous military exercises throughout the year and flights and jets flying across the island like every year. But this is another level because it's definitely crossed that status quo that we often heard people talking about. This is changing the status quo unilaterally.
How nervous should we be about China's military drills around Taiwan? Well, President Trump says he's not that worried, but the Chinese military has described the exercises as a warning against Taiwan independent separatist forces and external interference. Joining us now is Chang Ching Kwong, who is a senior analyst at the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China. Good morning, Chung.
Good morning.
Now, are you as relaxed as President Trump seems to be about these new military exercises?
I don't think we should be that much relaxed because this is a military drill that's closest to the island so far. So they crossed the 12 nanometer boundary, it's challenging the 12 nanometer boundary for the first time. And in international law, this should be considered as an escalation. And it's a new phase of military threats. You can see China is trying to normalize this kind of threats. There's been numerous military exercises throughout the year and flights and jets flying across the island like every year. But this is another level because it's definitely crossed that status quo that we often heard people talking about. This is changing the status quo unilaterally.
How is China justifying these military exercises?
They will justify it by saying, A, Taiwan is part of China, and B, this is sending a warning to Taiwan independence, as you said, because they are stopping peaceful unification and challenging the regime's stability and existence.
Are they in any way a response to the recent arms sales to Taiwan by the US?
I'd say it's a whole lot of reasons why they're doing it. First of all, there's the Japan PM saying that if something happens to Taiwan, Japan will be involved because Japan is going to be greatly affected by this. And at the same time, we will also see that there have been quite a lot of movement from different people trying to support Taiwan in different countries. And at the same time, as you said, because there are like new arms sales announced to Taiwan, and therefore China is going to react. And I think that's all part of the reason why they're doing it at like closer to New Year.
I mean, on that note, the US is one of Taiwan's most significant backers in its resistance to, what looks like annexation plans from Beijing. But Trump's stance, particularly in this second term, has been quite inconsistent so far. How much is that inconsistency a problem for Taiwan?
I'd say there is definitely increased distrust in the US within Taiwan right now. You can see this kind of discussion about whether or not the US is going to back us, and it also affects whether or not Europe, Japan, or other countries feel comfortable voicing support for Taiwan and making deterrence plans to make a war less likely. Right now, we have seen no action so far concretely from any countries that said, we are going to try to deter this war, whether or not it is by useful political pressure, by sanctions, by something like the French maritime law, or by defense cooperation or other measures. We haven't seen any of those things. And I don't think the inconsistency in public coming from the US is very helpful when it comes to drawing up a common deterrence program.
In the Times today, Chung, Graham Downey's been warning about the silent vulnerability, as he calls it, from microchips, which are embedded in appliances and cars. And he's saying this isn't theoretical, that this could actually disable our system. This is Chinese microchips embedded in all sorts of household technology. According to this piece and Graham Downey's thoughts, all of this could be quite actively disabled by China, not just our homes, but hospitals, national infrastructure. Is this overly paranoid on his part?
I'd say it's not overly paranoid because if you look at the history of Chinese espionage in the past years, you will see they actually will abuse this kind of capabilities. So they have the capability to cut undersea cable, and they have done it. And they have, there's recent reports about alleged hacking into the for an FCD or visa system or espionage warning coming from the intelligence service against Westminster. So these things do happen, and it's not a paranoia that we're thinking about whether or not the Chinese government is going to do it, because it's built within the system, the capability and the motivation to do that. So it is not paranoid to think that because of the microchips that's in our system or in our household that they are going to use it.
And what could your average person do to guard against that?
There are quite a lot of things that we can do. So, like the very basic security measures, like two-step authentications, make sure you don't repeat your password, choose your service and product providers. Like there are a lot of service online that helps you identify whether or not it is made in China. And I think making those conscious decisions on a daily basis that you are choosing more reliable options, even though they might cost you a bit more at the beginning, is very important. And by doing that collectively, we kind of build a demand of secure products and services that will in turn attract more cheaper versions of these reliable options for us. And it is actually a positive cycle that reinforces security and built-in privacy and all those things within the products that we're having, instead of choosing what's less reliable but looks better at the surface.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. That's Chung Ching Kwong, who's a senior analyst at the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China. Have a very, very happy new year.
Who couldn't have been clearer that those strikes, the drills, the military exercises are extremely threatening. However, we have Donald Trump playing them down and sort of saying he's not concerned. Actually, there was a statement released by the Foreign Office who've said we continue to call for restraint and the avoidance of any further actions that risk undermining peace and stability. But as ever, there is caution when these things happen, that we get warning signs that something might happen, and then we get words and sort of intervention by these statements, but not much more than that. And you wonder if the UK government will feel that is sufficient or not.
As China fired rockets into waters off Taiwan on Tuesday in its most extensive war games to date, analysts said the move demonstrated China's confidence in pressing its military advantage. The drills rehearsing a blockade come days after the U.S. announced a record $11.1 billion arms package to Taiwan. For the first time, China's military said the drills were aimed at deterring outside intervention. Colin Koh is a senior fellow at Singapore's S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies.
It is unlike in the past when these exercises were being described as rather generic routine exercises. For example, now if you look at the course coming out from Beijing, it is very clear that the explicit aim is to blockade the key installations, in this case, the ports, for instance, right? So this is, of course, directed at Taiwan, of course, directed at the US, that, all attempts to try to reinforce Taiwan will fail.
A senior Taiwan security official told Reuters that China appeared to be simulating striking land-based targets, such as the US-made HIMARS rocket system. That's a mobile artillery system with a range of about 186 miles that could hit coastal targets in southern China. Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te said that frontline troops were primed to defend the island. Lyle Goldstein, Asia Program Director at Defense Priorities, said this is an arms race Taiwan cannot possibly win.
My sense is that China is feeling rather confident. They have had, let's say, a string of successes. For example, sort of going toe-to-toe with the United States during the trade war, the whole situation with rare earths and so forth.
Taiwan sit alongside key commercial shipping and aviation routes, with about $2.5 trillion in trade moving through the Taiwan Strait each year. A Pentagon report released last week said the U.S. military believed China was preparing to be able to win a fight for Taiwan by 2027. It also said U.S. military planners believed Beijing was contemplating carrying out strikes from China to take Taiwan by brute force if needed.